Fine. Yes, I know that I'm being recorded and we are out on streaming. So what is this all about? Well, in my daily life, in my daily work with my colleagues, it's a long time since I started hacking and breaking things. And for strange things in life, I'm on the other side. I'm trying to stop the people who are breaking it up. So it's a changing paradigm for me. So I realized that things that I learned for those years and that were so complex, when you understand the four basic concepts, that's not that easy. It's not that easy. What is basic things? What do I mean by saying basic things? Deploy servers in a rapid, automated way to create clusters in cloud, which is not that fashionable when compared with machine learning, and to do it easily and cheaply. 2 years ago, I started to learn that. I asked you about Rancher because we're going to use it today. Okay, I'll give you the mental roadmap. My notes is a TXT. I'm going to explain it step by step from zero how to mount a pass. We open source software for free, except for the machines, for obvious reasons. And step by step, we're going to deploy a certain of things. We're going to escalate them. And I'm going to start with a very easy exercise. With an easy exercise, we can deploy OpenBAS, Kali, or anything, and it is multi-environment. I used to say a lot of rude words, so my apologies. But what you said hacking in your title? Well, yes, between inverted commas. Why hacking? How many people here work in hacking, pen testing? Have you worked in hacking, pen testing? Yes. Developers? Programmers? Raise your hands, please. When you do the pen testing and hacking pool, you have to make an audit. Normally, you have two options. Either you do it in your PC or you have a server that you share with your colleagues. Normally, it's a big machine under the table. And everything is connected there, and you share things. Or the third option is that you have this in a Russian server, weird Russian server, and you have to pay, but suppliers don't like that. The basic story there is that if you're a lot of people, for me it's more than 3, you have to share machines, resources, and software. The OpenBAS Nexus and the machines. If you have a Kali, you want to use it in a remote server with a good internet connection, for scanning, etc., you have to share that with your colleagues. So these are bad implications. You have to do better administration. So with this problem in mind, I thought, if I had to make an audit, I would like to have a cluster or a site or a place with a click, and I would like to have a whole environment for me. I can do my scannings, my panels, the Metaspray, and when I finish, I can clean it up, and I can rebuild it easily for if there's any need. So we have a small site, and we don't interfere with our colleagues. This is good for security. But if you do WordPress, it's good to have this place for you. That I'm going to talk about hacking, but nobody does this. And once you do it, it's very comfortable to have this place for you. So this is my spam. This is my good photo. So it's a bit blurry so that you can't really see me. My Twitter account and many other things that you could. And my alias is Cr0hn. Let's start from scratch. Javi, it's okay? But otherwise, I don't need to move a lot because I'm being recorded, I'm being filmed. What is a PAAS? It's a basic element. From left to right. You can see this photo in many places. We have our hardware. We have our PCs. You manage. You do everything. Internet connection, the electricity, users, middleware, runtime, everything. You do it all. That's when you manage. Then, for the server and the IGA, well, you delegate it. That's on the second column. Platform as a service. Virtualization and operating systems are managed by someone else, and we only do our applications, our data. It's our software. And what is SaaS? Software as a service. Gmail. That's Gmail. Software as a service. So something that we delegate, and we just hire that. It's very simple. That's the level of responsibility here. So we're going to mount a PAAS called PAS, because I want this to be easy, user-friendly, not difficult to maintain. We're doing pen testing and hacking, and I just want to have a Nexus or a Kali. What's underneath, I just don't care. I want to manage just the basic elements I need, not the rest. So you know what Docker is? A brief definition. These are snapshots from router. Docker, it's the website, is a standardized way of packaging your software. What does it mean, really? Docker is not a virtual machine. It's not a virtual machine. It's not a virtual machine. In Windows it virtualizes, yes, but it's not a virtual machine. We take our Apache, your Tonka, and MAT, and instead of to run it in the operating system, you put it in a Cr0hn, like a package. And what are the advantages? All the dependencies that you would install in your operating system, you install it in your Docker. So you're not going to fill your operating system with shit or with spam. This is for you, and this is free, and it's clean. It could be a Cr0hn, okay? Next step. You know what is a Docker orchestrator? You can raise your hands. Oh, a couple of people, yeah. I think you are going to raise your hand too much. You're going to get bored. An orchestrator in Docker means that it manages containers. What does it do is the following. We can manage our applications as Cr0hn, and they are encapsulated. What we gain is that it's easy to make small portions, small bits and pieces, and everything runs independently. With the more bits you have, the more chunks you have to manage more elements. It's like at the beginning of the internet. We had too many domains, and you can't remember everything. You have lots of containers and lots of pictures. You need someone to say to you, this is shut off, I have to reset it, I have to restart again, I'm getting this container and I put it there. But somebody has to manage these containers. That's the orchestrator. Today, these are the most important orchestrators. Kubernetes by Google. It's a benchmark now in the world of Docker. It's easy to use, it's very comfortable, and there's somebody else who's paying, because it's Google paying for that behind. Swarm. It belongs to Docker project. It's an open project, and it's got its own orchestrator. And on the right, you've got Cattle. Rancher is an American startup. They started to do this control program so that this is easy to manage. And for any reason I don't know, they created their own orchestrator called Cattle. It's small, very small if compared with the other. It's kind of a toy that can manage 300 machines. So it's very small. It's in Java. I hate Java, so for me it's a problem. Well, regardless of Java, it has more memory requirements. Well, these are orchestrators. We're going to use Rancher by default. Why? Because it's a toy, but it's so easy to set up. Configuration is so easy. You don't need to do anything. I don't have a clustering at home with 300 machines. If I had 300 machines, it means I have a lot of customers, and I wouldn't be here. I would be drinking beer. So the concept is clear. I have no more slides. This picture is a bit silly, but it reflects what an orchestrator does. You see subgroups with different colors. It's a logic grouping of boxes. That's Docker. What an orchestrator is doing is group these boxes in a logic way, and it manages as a whole. You don't care about that. It does it for you. The blue part can be a service, a WordPress with SQL for the cache. These are 3 containers. Logically, there's only one application, but each one is in one machine. It's like an OBLAN. I think it reflects the concept. This is the shelf life and the slides. What is Docker? What is orchestrator? There are 7 of those. I have no videos to show you. Nothing is pre-mounted. I'm going to mount it here with you from scratch. Okay? I'm so happy that you know what I mean.
Dios, qué pelotas sois.
Too many compliments. I'm not lying, so I'm going to log in with my account. I'm using the Wi-Fi. Please, it has to work. The login in DigitalOcean with my colleagues in Madrid. We are dealing with this together, and we're going to mount a pass to offer free service to the world. Dependence analysis software and everything will be put here. 2-factor authentication, double factor. I was talking about patience. It's going to be like this, like waiting for things to happen.
Vale, entonces, ¿qué voy a hacer? Sí, pero estamos de coño, ¿qué?
Is this a joke? I forgot the password.
Lo que tiene llevar las cuentas de si de que si no sé qué, que si.
I've got too many accounts. I don't want to say rude words. That's why I'm just saying bullshit. Droplet. I'm going to explain what Rancher is. I'm going to thank once again my colleague, Raúl, who works in Rancher. And this morning I called him because I couldn't do something. It was a start at 12 a.m. a Saturday, and he's a saint, and he helped me. Rancher, you can mount pass, it's open source. They're quite good. They started like a test and now they're competing with other brands, Pensive and others. Where do they get the money? Consultancy. Consultancy. What are we going to do now? The code is in GitHub. First, well, Rancher has various parts. The server is the we that we're going to see it when we deploy it, and then the hubs which execute the actions. I am going to deploy the machines in DigitalOcean. Let's create a droplet. Do you know how to use DigitalOcean? It's for dummies. So DigitalOcean, instead of installing the machine and installing the Docker, let's take the Docker application that's already there. 10 euros. I'm paying for that. Let's mount it on the same CPD. I'll explain why. We don't want this, but we want private IPs, label MAC. We'll call it Rancher Server. So it's being created. I'm going to talk about the parts. So Rancher with the graphic interface and the server part, which coordinates all the hubs. The Rancher server in itself shouldn't be a part of what is executing the software because it's managing the rest. If the software manager has to do more things at the same time, the result is bad. So I chose a machine of 1 giga RAM. Why less? Because this is in Java for the moment. The Java virtual machine needs a minimum of 1 gigas RAM memory. So that's why 1 giga is the minimum. The machine is there. We're going to connect with it. I don't remember if it was Ubuntu. Perfect. We're there as a root. And how do we install Rancher? Right. It's not that difficult. I promised it was going to be easy. There are various ways of installing because Rancher has a database with all the status. You can put it in another server, but everything is going to be there. Otherwise, it's going to be too long, and I speak too much. Well, I'll show you how to install Rancher. The port is 80, listening from the port 80. And let's wait. Yes. Adoring the code while it's mounted. And the server is a bit easy because it starts a lot of processes. And at the end, let's do a control. No user, no ID, no password. I'll change the password because I don't want you to see mine. Well, and we'll add execution hubs, the nodes, and then I'll show you the parts of the catalog, the stack, the users, volumes, the DNS distributed. It's so easy for kids. I'm going to try to use the locals, but in fact it's 4G, so I'm connected to the Wi-Fi and it's not that fast. Docker logs. I'm very impatient. Look, it's downloaded according to the operating system, its version, and all this. And at the end, when it finishes, IP port, and then we'll get it. We'll get inside. You can ask me questions with a microphone, please, if you have any questions, but not too many offenses.
Fijaos, está con 1 giga de RAM y me sigue
1 giga, and it's slow.
me cuesta todo, lo mismo. Yo esto lo tengo en
Well,
producción de
I've got it
verdad,
in real production in another place. I have 20 hubs, and it's okay. No problem.
¿vale? Una cosa os he dicho que
But
tras esto, el tema de la IP privada,
about the private IP, why?
porque todos los nodos
All the
necesitan
hubs
conectarse con
need to connect with Rancher.
Lo que hace Rancher para
What Rancher does to communicate internally with the hubs is create a VPN between the hubs. It's encrypted. It's okay. What is the advantage? We can have, at least in theory, because in the practice it's not real, it's not in fact, we can have a multi-cloud pass. DigitalOcean in one, and Rancher communicates that through VPN, and for you it's the same. I don't like seeing invalid connection refuse. Don't like that.
A ver, Docker, PS, Chachihuay, Fandango. Digo, y la IP privada, ¿por qué tenemos la IP privada?
LP, private ILPs. If you put public LP, you can communicate it as a whole, but for performance reasons, if you communicate all the hubs through the private network with the same CPD in the same server, it's going to be faster. You will gain in security because everything goes through the private network. That's why I insisted on private network. I'm going to mount an distributed NFC. If we do the public IP, it's slower. I should see, welcome to Rancher if everything is okay. Oh, look at that. Welcome to Rancher. Welcome. Good. Rancher is installed. Okay, let's do something else first. Like mobile notifications. What does it want? Authentication. Access control. This is a type of authentications that you can choose. Active Directory, GitHub, if you want to authenticate with GitHub. It's important. You can say what user in GitHub wants to authenticate. Or local user. Name. Cr0hn. Password? I'm not going to say it. Okay, the authentication is done. Add your first host. The host is the cluster hubs, in fact. Before adding these hubs in the cluster, I'm going to show how it's distributed. Here, first, we have the environments. What is an environment? An environment is a logic unit where a lot of applications can be managed. What is an application? An application is a set of services. A WordPress with SQL, with all this is an application. This is called stack here. You can have a lot of stacks or a lot of sets and services. And the father of the group is called an environment. You can have different environments, and you can manage the users per environment. This has to will only have access to this one or to this other environment. Each environment has its own machines, so it's quite flexible. If you want to do different or odd things, you don't need to change this because this works okay with this. And by default, this is active here. And I was telling you about orchestrators. By default, the cattle orchestrator is active. You can change it. It's open here in this tag. You can play with that. You can change cattle and Mesos or Kubernetes. Mesos is here for historical reasons, but you can change the orchestrator. What is stack is the grouping of services, the set of services. This is a system service. Filo network services, it's the scheduler. Why are they in red? Because Rancher is waiting to deploy them. But obviously, they're not deployed because there's nobody there. There's no machine where we can execute that. It's in red. When we add a machine, all of them will be green, and they will be distributed. Catalog. What's a catalog? I love these double-click things that work. Rancher has a lot of double-click thingies that work. You have Apache, Zookeeper, Confluence. You have a lot of those. A WordPress. Okay, you go to this WordPress template, you double-click, and you've got this, and it's mounted, it's distributed. You want another one? Well, pick one. The template is there. You have templates of almost everything. Now the hosts. To add a host, what is this asking us? Well, before anything, I'm going to do this change. This is the LP in Rancher. APL, the Rancher APL. We have to tell the hubs where the Rancher is. Never an IP, because if the IP changes, we're fucked. So we have 3 hubs. They will start running, and let's associate a domain name to this. Let's run and let's start 3 hubs. They will start to run. These are cheaper. The cheapest ones. In Amsterdam, with private IP. How many? 3. Rancher. Node.
¿Te das cuenta? Genial. Vale, crear los 3. Mientras los crea.
So it's now creating the 3. Will manage the DNSs. To manage the DNSs, I use Cl0hn. Strange pronunciation. And I will say why. It's free. It gives you free service because it's RAID server. It's instantaneous. And SSL and without SSL. SSL or without SSL. It's an SSL that is not signed, but in almost all browsers, it's not ticked. So it depends. You have to put your certificate. I'm going to allocate a domain. IP.
Rancher, PDP. Si le quito la IP, mejor, ¿vale? Añádeme el registro.
We add the register.
Vale, ya estamos otra vez. Ahora por dominio, eso sí. No es un 2, 3, 4.
It's not 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not my password. Where were we? We were adding hosts. Look, by default, this is the result. The first host with the IP, it's bad. You have to add this name by default. This is the URL that nodes are going to use to connect with each other. Following. Next, my DigitalOcean, how many do they need in number of tokens? 24. You have C2, Azure, There's more drivers also. You have a lot of sites. So this machine by machine, it's executing Rancher, and you have a lot of possibilities. I love this.
Okay, some other things. The first time I saw Rancher, I didn't know what this was here. There it says a Linux machine. Look at the security groups and look at the firewall. Add a label if you want to, because the hosts can be labeled. We don't have to label them now. And then it says, what is the IP of the host that you're going to register? Maybe we don't always read this, and we make a common mistake, myself included, because the IP that they're asking you for is for the machine that you want to add, not for the Rancher. It's the IP that Rancher uses to connect to the host. It's completely the opposite. You can say, oh, the host isn't working because you haven't put the IP in. So we start with node 3. We put the IP of node 3 up. Here you can see command at the bottom that you have to run the machine. I'm going to open a session. Let's close this one because we don't need it anymore. So we connect to the machine. Now we're root, and just copy and paste. And now we're going to our Rancher. We said no to this one, so we're here. That's just to show you how long the node takes to appear. You can see it in real time. We've launched it. And see? You remember the things that were in red? They're now running because they've got a place to run. Oh, of course, it's all done in Mohost because they have no other room to do it. So they'll start to go yellow, and then they'll start to go green. When they're in yellow, it's because they're being built, they're being created, and then they'll gradually turn green. So we've got a host. Let's now add another one. We don't need anything from this host, so we just exit. So we run this, run all of this. Now you have to wait for the nodes. If you use the drivers and hear the nodes, you can see them popping up. It's easy to use because if you say you want 25, that's fine. You get one after another. And when they've all popped up, there you go. We'll carry on. So now I'm going to close the consoles. If you realize Rancher, what it does is it goes from one side to the other, and it distributes everything around all the machines that we've got. If we had 50, it would distribute it all around 50. It takes a while to start. That's normal because it's got to download the pictures, etc., etc. Look, some things are already active. And then network drivers are active, the IP set. The health checks is a service that Rancher offers, which monitors each and every one of the containers to check whether it's crashed, and we can say whether we want to restart it or not. And as I said before, the next thing that I'm going to do, I need a WordPress now. Let's just get a WordPress here. Okay? That's all we need. Okay, let's just see if it's working now. One way absurd of guaranteeing your, or making the traffic to your control panel is using SSL. Come on, the wireless is a little slow. In the meantime, we can add data. These are a formula that you can parameterize. You can put the parameters there that you want. Name. What does that name mean? It's the name that we're going to give when we list all the stacks. I'm going to call it my WordPress 1. And in environment 24, the rest are just default values. And actually, we're going to leave them as they are. It's taking time to start. This is a network problem. Should have had this in 4G. Okay, let's progress. One of the obvious problems of organizing a web service is, okay, you can have 4 machines, 3 or 28. Where do I write my DNSs? I don't know if you've realized that. I've got 25 machines or 25 VPs. Where do I write the DNS? By default, virtually all those templates that have Rancher have a balancer for a port which goes service to service. So you need to know where the port is to write it down. So if you want to start this, the next thing you have to do after looking at the WordPress and after adding WordPress is to see how we can make this more dynamic, how we can manage dynamic services. And how dynamic? We want to tag them. If I put on a service a tag, I need to put a name and a domain, and this way we can separate one thing from another. Oh, this network is so slow.
Sí, mi móvil se llama Archiduque y es un señor. Es un señor como pocos hay. ¿Estamos? Uno de los problemas que puede pasar es cuál es.
Another problem that you can have is that when everything starts, and in the meantime, let's do something. WordPress. I don't know where I'm going to deploy it. This is so slow. Got any questions? In the meantime, I can answer them because this is obviously taking a long time.
Ven puntuales. A ver. Sí.
Question?
Eso es lo que he dicho que iba a hacer y debería haber hecho eso.
Yeah, this is what I said I was going to do, and I should have done. Thank you for the question, which we didn't
He
hear.
metido las IP públicas, se puede comunicar exactamente igual.
You can communicate in the same
La
way.
VPN, pero obviamente no lo hace rápido, que es probablemente una de las cosas que me esté pasando.
Well, this is probably what's happening to me, and that's why it's going so slowly. Let's copy it again and see what happens.
No, fuera de coña, es que si no después... Hostia, no quedo de eso. No, lo ha dicho. Porque si no después montar
If
el
not
NFC distribuido
afterwards,
pública, como que
if you want a distributed NFC by
se va a hacer más chungo.
distributed public networks, then things are different.
Y por eso también le pesa esto mucho más el culo de lo habitual.
This is probably taking a lot longer than it normally would do.
Voy a entrar en modo desesperación, voy a cambiar de navegador.
I'm going to change browser. See if that helps.
Esperando a Rancher.
Waiting for Rancher. That's the new title of my talk.
Me las cojo, perdón. Para esos containers con las privadas. Me parece que no me estoy poniendo nervioso porque no sale esto.
I'm just getting a bit nervous because it's not working.
Fijaos la cantidad de mierda que nos levanta.
Look at all the rubbish that's appearing. Incredible. Let's look at IP private IP.
¿Qué vas a hacer? Me lo voy a coger todo como un campeón.
I'm going to try and change it all and see if it works.
No, Docker. Y si lo sabéis, por favor, decídmelo simplemente algún comando, decir, mátalo todo.
If you know a command just to kill everything, just tell me, because this is going so slow, it's unreal.
Jo. R. Vale, ahora sí. Fijaos, no hace falta que entre otra vez en el panel de control de Rancher.
You don't have to go into Rancher's control panel again. It's only going to ask me for an IP, but we know the private IP. And now we're connecting.
¿Qué máquina era esta? ¿Os acordáis? Vale, nodo 3. Vamos con el nodo 3. Sí. ¿Ahora? Es que no sé, el problema es que no tengo cable aquí. Que tenga necesito adaptador. Ya, por eso sí. Si el problema... Ya. Es que los Mac estos nuevos son muy guays, ¿sabes? Y dicen, ¿cable para qué? Pues necesito una cosa de estas, USB-C, Ethernet a USB-C. Sí. Vale, el nodo 2. Siento que os estáis aburriendo más de la cuenta. Vale. Como suelen decirse, esto es IP privada, ¿no? Sí. Suele decirse cosa del directo y más de verdad no puede ser. Es esta, ¿no? Sí, venga. La última y vamos con el nodo 1. Aquí. Vale. Voy a copiar el comando de crujírmelo todo. Crujírmelo todo. If config. TTT. Vale. Ahora para la buena marcha, Rancher debería de ir.
Okay, Rancher should now work.
No, vuelve, vamos.
Let's see if it does. See what happens.
Una cosa, voy a probar ya por probar con la IP del Rancher.
Try with a IP, a Rancher IP.
Venga. A ver, es que guay. Me voy a crujir el Rancher y me va a quedar más ancho que largo. Ah, no, es que la máquina no contesta. Mira qué bien. O sea, a lo mejor por eso no funciona. Es un detallazo. Mira, ya hemos entrado con este navegador. Me vale. Vale. Venga, vamos otra vez. Infraestructura. Tenemos los nodos.
Okay, let's look at the nodes.
Mogollón, ¿no? A mí ya no.
Los insultos que digo en voz baja no los oís, ¿no? Que los insultos que digo en voz baja no los oís, ¿verdad? Pues menos mal que no me los he crujido, porque vamos. Ya. A ver. Vale. La 188. Ese es este. Mira qué guay. Este no me ha ido. El nodo 3, justamente. Si tenga que ser algo de la red, si no, el error este que me da.
Oh, it had to be something to do with the network. Otherwise, it wouldn't have given us this mistake. Okay, we've done it at last. Don't applaud because it might suddenly crash.
Juro por Dios que esto normalmente suele ser estable.
Normally, this is more stable. I swear to
Bastante
it,
estable.
if not very stable.
Distribuyendo las cosas. Y
And it's distributing everything. The stacks are being initializing. Let's see if we can deploy WordPress.
WordPress.
Let's deploy WordPress again.
Oye, que no le das tiempo a pensar.
Doesn't even give you time to think.
Ahora me empiezo a arrepentir de no traer virus.
Let's see if I can get into other videos.
Déjame que mire cómo está la máquina en DigitalOcean. No va a ser que esté petadísima, que no debería.
Let's have a look and see how the machine is, just to check that it's not completely full. Shouldn't be.
Creo que la tiene.
So the CPU's there.
No voy a poder. ¿Has visto lo que ha pasado?
Did you see what happened?
Es decir, es un doom de putísima madre.
This is something that's really gone wrong.
Claro que no va. Si se ha-
Of course, it won't work because Docker's.
¿Sabéis cuál es el comando
chock-a-block. You know what the command is to restart the service? I can't remember.
Contra lo de que muera Docker, claro, podemos hacer entre poco y muy poco.
So we're not going to be able to do very much by the time Docker dies.
Está arrancando y tal.
Okay, it's starting up again.
Me dan muchos errores, pero tiene muy
It actually has given me all sorts of mistakes, but I've never had Docker die on me. Okay, database starting up. If it works and it works the next 3 minutes, if not, I'll start all over again because it's embarrassing, especially when I've done this hundreds of thousands of times. When all the services that are working, Rancher still will manage it, but it doesn't matter if the master crashes. So what is already up and running will carry on running. They won't be connecting to the masters, but the service won't go down. Let's go to the catalog again. Let's just hope Docker doesn't crash now. Let's try and launch WordPress. There, it creates a stack, and the stack has a unique name. Those are all the services that are already deployed, and now we're building this new stack. If you go inside it, you can see the containers that it has, that all the services that make it up. There you can see it. WordPress, the balancer that I said, will start with the machine that it's supposed to start with by default. And when you, and all of you that know that if you play with Rancher, you can make different dependencies between services, and that's what's happening now. It's got this dependency. WordPress has a dependency, so it's starting up in the order. And in the meantime, let's see where the container is with the web interface. The balancer is there in Observer, and the database and the patch is in a different. It actually doesn't matter. So what do we do to make progress? We'll have to put the domain in this machine because we haven't got the balancer. Everything's gone up. But if you look, you can see the icon here. This little icon means it's an entry point. And here, if we click on this, it'll take us directly to the port. Does anybody know why this isn't working? Can anybody tell me? Anybody out there? Because we've put the private IP, that's great. But let's call it the equivalent to the public IP. And I can't remember what it was called, Rancher 2. Droplets. Rablets, droplets.
arrancar
When I've just started the WordPress,
diréis, ¿qué mierda le está pasando a esto? Madre mía. Base de datos está activa. ¿Pero qué coño pasa, güey? Parece que me ha mirado un tuerto, y joder. Pues nada, no vamos a poder hacer esta puta mierda de prueba tampoco, Las IPs están bien puestas.
the IPs are all in the right place.
La base de datos arranca y muere, arranca y muere, arranca y muere, no sé.
For some reason, the database starts and then dies.
Vamos a empezar a la desesperada.
Let's
Añadir un esta cámara.
add a stack manually. Who cares?
¿Qué podemos hacer
What
funcionar
can-
así a mano que nos conectemos para que
How
veamos
can we
que
do
nos
this
permite-
manually and just make sure that it's not lying to us? Let's go to
Puedo decir
the
esto,
different
esto de
nets.
casa.
I hate to say this works at home, but it's true.
Vamos a levantar un Ubuntu, por ejemplo.
Okay, let's have an Ubuntu. Let's add an Ubuntu.
¿Vale? Vamos a lanzar un Redis, sin más.
Well, let's launch a net. Let's just create a network.
Redis. Lanzamos Redis. ¿Vale? ¿Qué vamos a hacer ahora? Vamos a conectarnos a Redis. Vamos a hacer lo que no hace el
Let's do what WordPress isn't doing.
Yo la esperanza no la pierdo, no sé por qué coño no funciona por las narices.
I don't know why WordPress simply won't work, but it won't.
Vale, ya tenemos un Redis corriente. Ahora, tenemos que poner un puerto para
So
poder conectarnos.
now we have to add a port to be able to connect.
¿Qué vamos a hacer?
And how are we going to do this? We're going to add,
¿Vale? Y aquí ya nos pide que pongamos
and now we're being
que
asked
mapeemos rutas. El balanceado de cargas es una chaproxy.
to map routes.
Entonces, Redis no va por HTTP ni va por
Red,
nada. Entonces, va por
Reddit doesn't go by HTTPM, but go for a normal. Look, the port is 33.
ese puerto de Redis de cabeza.
Let's just have a look here.
Ah, pues ya aprovecho para. Si estáis aquí, os podéis meter en la consola.
If you're here, you can go to the container of the console.
Si es que a saber en qué puñetero este está guardado. Mira. Redis, doc.
Okay, Redis doc. Let's see if we can find it.
Sí, no recuerdo mismo cómo se fue.
I can't remember which port 6 is.
6379.
6379, that's the one we want.
636.
6379.
Y nos conectamos, fijaos dónde.
And let's connect. Let's connect to Redis,
637.
to 6379.
Name,
Give it a name.
mi load balancer.
My load balancer.
Entonces, que si nos conectamos a este puerto en teoría, pues ya no deberá haber problemas.
If we connect to this port, in theory there should be no problems. Let's do what we did before.
Tenemos
So,
el Redis,
we've got Redis in this machine
balanceador,
and the balancer in a different one.
¿vale? Entonces nos tenemos que conectar a
So,
donde está la máquina. Pues,
we should be able to connect to where the machine is. So, let's
voy a
do
sacar
it.
IP pública.
I'm going to get the public IP of that machine. For some reason, this doesn't want to work.
Que estaba en
I was in Node 1. I'm going to close what it doesn't work. Fine. The balancer is active.
Redis. Entonces, en teoría, si le ponemos la
In
IP,
theory, if we put the IP,
Berman, no dice
Redin Berman, The host is there. Now it works. It's a very bad test that you can't see because it's down there, but it's sending and receiving packages, and now it's connected. Now we have a balancer, and something is now working. The WordPress is not working, but at least one stack is running. The Reading is in green because it's working. WordPress, I'm going to just put it away. What else can we do in 57 minutes plus 40 minutes of things that don't work and that I've wasted? Something in the catalog that I can show you. I wanted to show you this with a WordPress, but it doesn't work. I can't do everything at the same time. Let's go to my catalog. What we've been doing beforehand, well, it's a catalog. We can add any catalog. I'm going to add another catalog that I have in my GitHub. It's my catalog. And I have more things here. We add this catalog. Let's copy the address. To manage catalogs, add a catalog. Excuse myself, I'm getting very nervous now because it's not working properly. So the catalog indicates repository Git. So in a public or private Git, you have to put the authentication before. So it goes to our Git, it downloads, and my catalog is named Cr0hn.
Que lo otro puede fallar, pero esto no, pero que
This shouldn't fail.
no me cargue el catálogo.
It's impossible that it can't upload the catalog.
Que perdón un segundo, me viene a la cabeza de que como esta gente una cosa
I do apologize, but
demasiado ve es gestionar el tema de las versiones.
they do well, maybe there's the unstable server by default because they normally don't manage all this at the same time.
Estable el latest. Es que ya no sé cuál coño he instalado.
I don't even know which one I've installed now.
El amor hermoso. Visto que esto tampoco funciona.
This is not working, and I'm really sorry for that. I'm going to look for a web interface.
Venga. Vamos a lanzar el Grafana mismamente.
Let's launch this into Power.
Y por si acaso voy a lanzar 2 o 3 cosas más.
I'm going to launch 2 or 3 more things to see if something works. Pilot, traffic, untie. You know what Tido is? Tido is it's for Scrum-wise management.
Packet, Confluence. Mira, un GitLab.
A GitLab.
Lo voy a lanzar con configuración por defecto.
I'm going to put the settings by default. The only one that doesn't work is WordPress, and it's the one I prepared. Fantastic.
Bueno, venga, voy a hacerte caso, a ver si llevará razón.
Maybe the machine is right.
Yo creo que no se hagan con el WordPress. Fíjate lo que tarda en cargar la plantilla.
You see how much time it takes to upload the template? But the problem is with WordPress.
Toma, mirar que va desplegando cositas.
Is deploying little things here, where we got from the GitLab. It's deploying when it's downloading the image.
A ver qué cosas tenemos corriendo. Un Grafana.
What is run? A Grafana? The Redis? GitLab, it's uploading. At least there's the ready works. No, WordPress definitely says no. GitLab server.
Bueno, vamos a ser realistas.
Let's be realistic. Out of what I wanted to show you here, this doesn't work and this doesn't work. There's no way to run it. Either there's a web service that can be up, I'll show it to you. Wait, let's see what I can really show you. I could show you the Let's Encrypted with a web something. I hope it works.
Se arranca.
It's been started.
Vení muy bien, nos había perdido en 45 minutos que no me ha salido nada.
Now it's been 45 minutes since nothing appeared and nothing works. And you're going to run at my face, to laugh at me. That's why you come here, to laugh at me, because then nothing works. It's been like that for an hour.
¿En serio estás viendo por streaming?
You're watching that in streaming? Really?
¿Y queda también como en directo?
And it's real. I mean, it's live streaming. All the nodes have been disconnected.
Bueno, y ante esto que...
What can I do now?
Mira, a tomar por culo, lo voy a hacer con mi pass.
I'm going to do it with my pass, with one that I already mounted, something that is already available. It's mine and it works. It's already mounted, but it's the last possibility. This is one that is mounted, it works, and nothing has failed until now. So, I'm going to launch a WordPress here to see what happens. It's personal, it's getting personal. Fucking WordPress.
Y fijaos, aquí tengo mi catálogo.
Oh, my catalog is here. And it's loading.
A su chino chano, ¿sabes? Pero carga.
It's loading. Slowly, but it's loading.
4G.
It's 4G, and I don't have a lot of coverage. Maybe this is not going to work.
Virgen Santa, el amor hermoso. Y de la teta al hombro. Pues el otro es vergonzoso.
It's a shame, but this is worrying because this is mine and it's ready. This is worrying me. It says it's loading, okay, but who knows?
Voy a cambiarme la wifi, que ya...
Let's change the Wi-Fi. I'll choose another one.
No me jodas. Cloud, Catalog. WordPress, ya sabéis.
WordPress again, you know.
Cuando baje te puedo dar como un palo.
Well, maybe when it's finished, it's going to be so fast.
Pero vamos, el palo te lo vas a llevar igual.
It's horrible, but maybe it will happen when I'm finished.
Mientras WordPress no arranca,
Because WordPress is not running and it's not starting, I'm going to show you my catalog, the one that was in GitHub. Oh, this is fun. This is real fun. At last, this is my catalog.
Cabrones.
You fuckers.
Que tengo un Sentry,
I have a Sentry, MySQL. What's the difference with the original catalog? This is copy-paste, but we have additional setting parameters, and I have my own templates. For instance, in the database, in the Postgre, everything is tuned, and the information is going to be kept at local level when an NFS. It's an NFS database, but when it's bad, it's not the solution, but if you do it in the local network, if you don't have millions of concurrent connections, this is quite acceptable. But if you put NFS with a machine and an external volume in just one location, so all the machines are crashing, but you're not losing your database. WordPress is on. Almost. I'm starting to think that there's a problem with the picture in WordPress.
A ver si que es un problema con la imagen. A ver cuáles son las imágenes.
Let's see the images. WordPress is fantastic.
WordPress 4. Esto no tiene un estable como la gente normal.
This is not stable.
Si es que el problema es ¿por qué usamos WordPress?
Why do we use WordPress?
4, 9. Madre mía, el amor hermoso. Mira, voy a cambiarla por WordPress 4.
I'm going to replace it with WordPress 4.8. Maybe the planets have aligned against me. So you have to take care, be careful with the templates.
Mira, parece que ha arrancado. Ay, qué hijo de puta. Venga. Ahora aplaudí, por Dios.
Now please, a round of applause because I recovered WordPress. It's on.
Bueno, y después de sufrir un poco.
And after this suffering,
1 hora y 20.
An hour and 20 minutes, you have nothing better to do.
Bueno, ya voy a seguir con este dejo digital o digital usa que no sé qué mierda le pasa.
I don't know what this does, but now we have the WordPress. It's on. We have this. It's running on an IP. We want to run in a service and a domain. First, we're going to see where our WordPress is running. The WordPress balancer. It's running in this machine with the public IP. It's true. Let's go to this DNS. And then we type WordPress, Cr0hn.com. And we'll have the same. Fantastic. We still have the problem. We have to know where the balancer is. Obviously, that's not a good idea. Let's mount a balancer that is called traffic. By domain name will not be enrooted where it corresponds. It's easy. Traffic. Well, the Ranger version of traffic reads labels. So internally, it knows how to enroute it. I'm going to do the demo because after this, everything will work. Balancers. Let's add. Traffic is in the catalog. Let's take it from the catalog. Traffic. So it's waiting for the instructions. If it wants to load them. Look, this is a mini guide of how it works, settings, configurations, metrics to Prometheus, a lot of things. For you, it's transparent. Let's concentrate on this. Traffic will only be raised in hosts that you label with traffic LB. If you don't have a host with that label, it's not going to be up. Or if you have it in TRES, it will be up in TRES. Internally, it's going to be balanced. If you combine it with a DNS, you can do a round robin. It's quite simple. The two next ports, well, the CTP exposes the services. It's not 8080, it's just 80. I have an option for SSL for the moment, but I'm going to manage because it's still too early. And the 8443, it's an administrative option for traffic. It gives you information of what you put in there. The nice thing about this is that here, if you take this out, it's 80 here. That's it. Launch. And as it's starting, it's going to be called in those servers, in those machines where it's labeled with traffic. I'm going to wait. I don't know where I was. The traffic, well, the service is up, but it's not running any host. You see? I'm not running a host because you don't have labeled a machine. I'm going to label now this machine. Editing, label, traffic, LB. It's updated. It does it every 20 to 30 seconds. The traffic is analyzing the labels, and it's going to be up when it corresponds. Whilst it's doing that, let's go to the WordPress, and let's put the labels that traffic told us. Instead of doing the routing and the balancing one by one, the traffic is going to do that instead of us. We go to WordPress. Stop. So the balancer, in fact, with the balancer, we want a virtual hosts. This is the service which is called target. It's a target by traffic, and it's going to connect there. What is it doing? It's I have to tell traffic what is the service and in which port it is listening this service internally. It's 80, the number of the port. Labels, we add a label. Which ones? We have it here. Traffic mode. Stack. Domain. traffic port.
¿vale?
Okay,
Entonces, antes de darle,
before
voy a...
pressing.
Traffic ya está funcionando.
Well, you see traffic, it's working, it's up.
Voy a asegurarme
I'm
la
going
dirección que
to
nos pone el autor,
assure myself that
a ver
the
si no me he dejado ni...
address is okay. I don't want to forget any labels.
Mientras, os he dicho que este puerto...
I told you that this port was for administration of traffic, but by default, well, it's not possible to do that.
Este es un pequeño dashboard
This is
de lo que
a
el tráfico está
small
cogiendo. Ahora no está
dashboard
actualizado.
of what traffic is doing because nothing is labeled yet, but we're going to leave it there.
Cuando etiquetemos algo,
So when we're going to label something, you'll see that very rapidly it will appear.
entonces, whole label ya lo tenemos.
Whole level, we have it.
No queremos HTTPS.
We don't want HTTPS. Ports, labels, Ranger integration. That's what I'm looking for.
Nuestro dominio,
Our domain,
ya lo tenemos.
we've got it.
El alias,
The alias,
este es el que queda por poner. Puesto.
this was missing, so I need to add it.
Y vamos a llamar.
Let's call it WordPress.
Lo he puesto así un poco al punto, no me he preocupado demasiado porque ahora
Now,
que veáis,
I want you to see that traffic gets
cuál es
it,
el nombre del servidor que está.
and we're going to see the service name that we are using. Updating.
Fijaos, cuando yo le he dado aquí a actualizar,
And I clicked on upgrade.
¿vale? Nos permite editar la
We
imagen,
can
los
edit the
parámetros,
images, the
todo lo que
parameters,
queramos.
and a lot of more things, and it rises two containers, the one that is executed, another in parallel with the new options, and the two are waiting. When you click here, OK, it's upgraded, and the internal balances change, so the one that is in execution is the new one and not the old one. And in case the new version fails, you can do a rollback without losing the service. So it's updated, apply the changes. We have just one container. Traffic is still running. Maybe this will fail too. So I'm going to get sure that it's traffic enable. Stuck. Meanwhile, it doesn't find it yet. Traffic, port, WordPress. Its domain has to go to through another way. The guy who did traffic, he didn't think to expose these stacks in this way, with a stack not corresponding to a domain, but so that you have the HTTP label host with a big name, with a long name. It was devised in a different way. We people, with the users, we said, okay, that would be great to use it in this way. That's why it's been modified.
Aún así, voy a cambiar la... Bueno, si esto lo tenemos tal cual. Entonces, obviamente me dice que no lo encuentra.
It's not finding it.
Por supuesto, la versión del tráfico ha cambiado.
The traffic version has changed. Yesterday, it has changed.
pones? No los pongo, pues porque no quiero. Elche, entera, esto está corriendo. Bueno, aquí vemos las peticiones que le hemos hecho.
The queries are here.
Y el traffic está corriendo.
Traffic is running.
Bueno, pues como tampoco lo voy a pillar por lo visto.
Well, it's not getting it. It's quite complex. In fact, everything is failing with the, probabilities normally would be, and odds and probabilities will be in my favor now that nothing has worked. But with your demo, these demos that I'm showing, if you wanted to mount the NFS, the distributed NFS, in the catalog, in Rancher, you have a service that integrates by default Rancher. It's called Rancher NFS. It installs an agent in each of the machines. And this agent is connected with the server, the NFS server that you choose. And what is this doing? When you deploy an application in the catalog, as we are doing it now, when you select the storage, instead of the local, you can select it as driver, Ranger NFS, and underneath, Ranger is doing this task, and your container, you will see it as local, but everything is distributed, and it's going to NFS. This is the service. You can't deploy it because it's already deployed. When you deploy it, you say the IP or the name where the machine is running, and then in each host, there's a driver for NFS. If this driver is doing the caching to have all the machines agreeing and many other functions. And from the interface, if you go to storage, you can manage all the nodes, the network nodes. These are the nodes that are part of this NFS or the node network of NFS. And here you have the distributed volumes. So it gives you some information about that. When using this, the NFS, if you go to your catalog, this is a difference with the original version. With the volume called driver, you have the local, it's stored in local, the LVS and NFS for Amazon, but you can say NFS only, and then it creates a distributed volume that is transparent for you.
So it's not working. What I'm going to do is show you how the templates work. In this one, which I've got in GitHub, and it's got not much relevant information in it, so you can click on a public repository because all the relevant information is in parameters. There you can see on the right the instructions. And each file has these 3 little files in it. So you have the different categories. If you want to, you put the categories you want. And the most recent version that you want to see by default. And then you put all the ones that you want. So normally each number is a software version that we want to map. So in the overall file, what we do is we refer to one of the default setups, and we give it a name. So what have we got in here? We've got Rancher Compose and Docker Compose.
Lo que nos monta es la interfaz esa que hemos visto.
What it does is it sets up this interface that we've seen. It's as simple as that.
La descripción que lo vemos, la versión que es a la que mapeamos.
And the version that we've got in the general file here,
Necesitas una versión mínima de
if you want a
de
minimum,
Rancher, aquí en las questions,
here you can do it. And so when you get to questions that the users are such as password, username, and it's got different types. For example, text or list. So here you've got the new numbers, and you see that on the interface. So you get a list.
lo mismo,
And the same goes here. In Rancher, we say to it, and that's what it becomes. So what do we want? So we do our copy-paste, and it's the same for everything. The description,
si es necesario o no,
whether it's necessary or not, a default value,
y
and what else is important?
variable se corresponde.
What
¿Qué variable
variables,
interna, cómo las
what we're
llamamos?
talking about,
Estamos gestionándolo después. Lo
what we're going to call
que
them.
la gana. ¿De acuerdo? Entonces, claro, tenemos uno llama hostname,
What one's called a host name, one's a volume driver, etc.
vamos al Docker Compose.
So let's go to Docker Compose, and in Docker Compose, it's already been parameterized.
¿Vale? Pero, y al
And
darse
now,
cuenta,
I don't know if you've realized that when we see here,
esto,
this
¿no? Esta opción del hostname
this
viene de aquí,
option
que es la que te ha puesto el usuario. Reciente población
comes
variable.
here.
¿De acuerdo? Entonces, es muy fácil. Crear
So it's
una plantilla genérica
very easy
que
to
nadie que
create
esté-
a general template.
no va a dar tiempo, la voy a contar, digamos,
I'm not going to have time to do
vuestro
it.
entorno de hacking,
So you've got your hacking
Kali,
environment.
vuestro Nessus, vuestro lo que más rayos dé.
You've got whatever you
Entonces, ¿qué es
want.
la única opción que podéis necesitar?
What's the only option that you could
La
need?
contraseña por defecto que le deis al entorno
The
nuevo,
default password that you give the SSH
del entorno.
that you can
Al final dices, bueno,
include in
tengo
here.
Open Bus 8, 9,
You might have an open
lo que
bus,
sea,
an open bus 8 or 9,
4 y 5, yo qué sé.
and you've got Nexus 4 or 5.
Elegir cuál de
So you
los
can
necesitáis.
choose which ones you want to
Entonces,
set up.
el Docker Compose,
So Docker Compose,
exactamente igual.
that's the same.
Esto pues ya lo subimos.
So we upload this, and with the catalog that we saw before, off we go.
Quedan 25 minutos.
I've got 25 minutes left, and because absolutely everything else has gone wrong,
Voy a intentar,
what I'm going to try to do now,
por hecho de que no va a fallar,
even though I'm sure it's not going to work, because everything else hasn't worked, it's going to do
me da igual montar algo.
assemble something, anything. I really don't mind what.
Ideas,
Any ideas?
a montar un Open Bus.
Let's do an open bus.
Entonces, ¿qué hago? Pego. Bueno, ya acabo. Entonces, bus,
Open bus
configuración,
setup for Ranger. Open bus service,
database.
database,
Entonces,
and
vamos a empezar.
right. Let's start mapping.
Rancher Compose.
Ranger Compose.
Vamos a llamarlo
Let's
versión 001.
call it version 001.
¿Qué pregunta vamos a ver?
What
acerca del
question
Open Bus?
are we going to ask the open bus?
Es que somos aquí, necesitamos pocas.
Mm.
Vamos a un vídeo. A ver si... Vale. Entonces, puesto que el tráfico ha dicho que no funciona, pues vamos a poner...
And as we've seen that the traffic doesn't work, let's put the balancer. Open bus balancer.
Os explico qué coño estamos viendo aquí.
I'll explain what we're seeing here.
Todos los servicios que
All of
arrancáis
these services that you start
en Rancher,
in Rancher
server en este caso,
or an open bus
tiene
server,
un mecanismo de health check.
if they don't have a
Para
health
él,
check
significa que no
mechanism,
funciona, significa que está roto.
that means that it's not going to work. It's going to be in red or yellow.
Que si no tiene forma de comprobarlo,
So if you've got no way of checking it, the default policy is to start up again, restart, to reboot. And then you don't know what's happening. So
Esto es como le decimos a Rancher que nos monta un balanceador.
it's like when we said to Rancher to get the balancer.
Aunque se compre, ¿vale?
I'll tell you what it corresponds to in a
El
minute.
Open Bus por defecto
But by default, let's have a look at it here.
Esto lo tenemos finiquitado.
We've finished this. Let's move on now to POPs. Just so that we can see it in parallel.
De aquí que nos vale. El Open Bus balanceador, ¿no?
The balancer open bus. This is what we want.
El Open Bus balanceador,
And
que es,
there it
por
is.
preguntar algo, es el puerto que vamos a preguntar.
And this is the port we're going to ask.
Esto no lo necesitamos.
That's where we need it.
Vamos a crear un servicio
So
que se
let's
llama
create a service called
Open Bus.
Open
La
Bus.
imagen de Open Bus
And the image of Open Bus, let's have a look. What sort of image do we want? Bus Docker.
esta es la imagen.
That's what it looks like.
Imagen. Necesitamos variable de entorno.
And what about the environment? Doesn't talk about doesn't say anything about the environment in the tower. So
Volúmenes. No. Sé que
volumes.
estamos haciendo una versión jodidamente sencilla.
I know we're doing a very, very simple version, but because everything seems to be going wrong, as you can imagine, I want to
¿Cuál es el
have zero risk. So what's the
el panel de control?
port
12390, ¿no?
for the control panel? 9390, yeah?
Tenemos que decirle que vigile el puerto.
So you go to filler to control this port, 9390. Okay?
Y puerto.
Port 9390.
Vale.
Okay.
No necesitamos mucho más.
Shouldn't need any more than that. A description here. Right. Get rid of this. I add it to Git. Okay.
Bueno, nos va a salir la imagen del pobre porque no lo hemos cambiado. Vale, ya está. Pues,
There, we've got the image.
vamos a nuestro catálogo otra vez.
Let's go back to our catalog.
Catálogo. Y lo que tenemos que hacer ahora a este. Y lo que tengo que hacer es refrescar.
And what we now need to do is just to refresh it.
Para que la carga. Justísimo.
When, of course, when it wants to load.
Vale. Vamos aquí. Y nos hace un git pull para actualizar y traerse los
And it gives us a Git pull to update.
¿Veis? Ya tenemos aquí.
There, we've got it.
Open Bus,
Our Open Bus service.
¿de acuerdo? Con lo que le hemos puesto. ¿Qué pregunta le hemos puesto?
What question have we put there? The
Tenemos que
port.
haberle puesto el label, pero como se le he quitado.
We should have put the label, but I've removed it.
Launch.
Launch.
Fijaos que nos despliega el balanceador, ¿no? Como hemos dicho.
There you see the balancer deployed as we asked for it. 9390.
La pega que va a tardar
The Open Bus, unfortunately, would take a little while. That's the downside.
mayormente porque creo que actualiza toda la base de datos
Because what I think it does is it updates all the database.
de ejecutarse. Si lo ves en infraestructura,
But if you go to infrastructure,
es una cosa la verdad que a mí no me gusta mucho.
this is something I actually don't like.
Aquí no está desplegando el Open Bus, podemos hacer así.
What if you're waiting for the Open Bus?
Cuando descargue la imagen nos da
When it downloads the image, it'll allow you to see the logs.
verlo.
So if you go on see logs, and there you can see what's happening.
Para eso,
But for this,
descargado primero la imagen, que como ves,
you have to have downloaded first the image.
la imagen de Open Bus ocupa una cosa apañada. Todas las cosas que os he podido enseñar,
And of all the things that
alguna,
I haven't been able to show you, let's see if I can show you an NFS.
Let's Encrypt.
Okay, it's saying let's encrypt. Might even work.
Otra de las cositas,
Another thing that Another thing that appears in the catalog, which Rancher has, called Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt lifts another stack with the setups that you want. Every 3 months, when it runs out, it'll renew your certificate. What do you want that for? Well, if you've got a license, you want some kind of a certificate, email, this is a certificate. The domains are separated by commas. Another thing that you're perhaps not interested in, but just have a look at this. One of the things to choose Cloudthread is something that you can. So you've got Let's Encrypt, and it'll manage it for you automatically. I'm not going to do it because I've already done it, but I wanted to show it to you. When you run this, it'll create a Let's Encrypt stack. Why have I got them separated? Because I've got a Let's Encrypt service per domain. So when you want to add a new domain, you have to stop the service, start it again. This one, for example. Look at the setup action. Production. This is the DNS server. But look, there you've got it. Copy paste. And everything that I've asked for, I've asked for the certificates, that's all. That's great. So then how do I use these SSL certificates? Let's go to the stack. If you look, these stacks is a logical grouping together of all our infrastructure, because I've got everything functioning. I've got NFS, and it's all working. You can see the NF. I've got my PayPal server, my Rabbit server, my Trafficker, which isn't working. Nothing's working. I've got WordPress, which seems to have collapsed once again. But I've got like little pieces in a logical order, and afterwards, what I do is I connect them all up together. So I like to put in at one stack all the balances. Normally, because everything is then ordered. If you look at the balancer here, either per machine or by domain, however you want it. It's the same IP. I'm just getting all the balances ready, and in this case, I've got in one machine a balancer that does some things, another that does others. It's giving us a different service, okay? So, how come we set up the Let's Encrypt certificate? When we add a balancer, I've shown you how to do balancer, yes? This is a classic balancer. These are the ports that we're using. This is the URL, HTTPS, and the HTTP. And here we add the hosting router that we want. And in my case, it says OK. Open for the public, port 4, port 3, it goes to service, where I've got everything, and then it goes to the port. And the port's 9000 without SSL. It's the balancer that puts the SSL. And where is this SSL? If you go down here, the certificates that manage Let's Encrypt, there, are allowed by Rancher. If you want to go to certificates, or you can go down to infrastructure, certificates, and as Let's Encrypt, as it works, it gives you a certificate here, a public one, and you can see here 2 subdomains, and here I've got 6. And it gradually updates, adds one with all the domains. But it does it itself. That's what's so good about this. All you have to do is when you look here on 443, check the corresponding certificate. And then you go to certificates again and import. Let's see certificates. Paste, and that's it. Copy, paste. Whatever you're ready for. I know that the demo's not working as it should do, but let me just see if I can give you an idea. And then Docker Array, this is quite normal. Have you ever done a Docker register? Docker register is just an image in version 2, which is without SSL but uses the 5000 port. But your Docker client, your local Docker client, won't work without SSL. You can do a Docker push to your private server, but if you don't have an SSL, it'll say it won't do it. You can do a hub. But if you put a certificate which isn't valid either, it won't accept it. So the only thing you can do is add a valid certificate if you want to have your own doc image server. And that is a very simple way of doing it. And I'm going to use this for registry. Here we've got an NFS volume internally, and it maps. But I don't know if you realize here there's no router because it uses the rancher driver, and internally, when we've shown you all the distributed names, I've got them all now. All my images. I've got my server in NFS, but it's completely transparent, so it doesn't matter. And it's really comfortable. Let's hope the open bus is finished. If we're lucky, of course not. No. Let's see if I can at least download an image. Because I haven't even downloaded the image. Because an open bus image is like 2.8 gigas, which isn't by no means chicken feed. Let's encrypt is there. Let's go to the command line. Rancher has an FLI, when we can automate things. My idea is to do this demo, and with all the environment, what I wanted to do was for the script to create a domain, a stack, and using traffic, it would map this domain directly to the open bus. And to do this automatically, it's like I said at the beginning. If there are 4 auditors, we're going to have auditor 1, auditor 2, auditor 3, auditor 4. So you can, each maps its start. And as unfortunately nothing's working, I'm going to show you the commands of how this works. To create a domain, there's a library. So I've written a script, and you put the domain name. And I know this works. And of course, it's not going to work today, as you already know. How does this little script work? It's very simple. Can you see the bottom here? Otherwise, if not, I'll change.
Este es el script que subirá después, ¿vale?
This is the script that we're going to put there.
Que instalar, que solamente tiene una dependencia.
There's only one dependency here, which
Se llama
is
Cloudflare, es que se me da fatal.
Cloudflare.
Entonces,
Cloudflare.
install, Cr0hn requirements. ¿Vale?
Here you can see what I'm typing in and what happens.
Ya está. Entonces, hacéis ahora sí. Cloudflare script. -h. Tenemos dos acciones.
There, we've got two actions.
Subdominio.
We can either create a subdomain or remove it. That's all we need, really.
Entonces, voy a ejecutar ahora crear y nos va a dar un file.
We'll do it, we'll create it, but it'll fail, you'll see. This will definitely fail.
¿Vale?
Okay.
Esto no es el fallo que te ha quedado. Vale.
This wasn't the fault that I was expecting.
¿Vale? Entonces, ¿qué fallo nos está dando?
What
Tenemos un
fault?
fallo bastante feo,
It's a
pero básicamente
pretty horrible
el fallo
fault,
no lo da porque no
but-
hemos pasado ningún tipo de credencial de autenticación.
because it gives us this fault because we haven't had any authentication credentials.
Entonces,
So,
para que esto sea
for
más o
this
menos serio,
to be taken seriously,
lo coge de variables de entorno.
it's taken from the credential
No para que yo lo haga así, es que la
environment
gente sabe
variables.
hay que fijarse lo que hace.
You have to be careful with what you're doing. So the credentials
Tiene que tener este nombre. Esto no lo he
have
puesto
to
yo,
have
lo
this
he puesto en
name.
usuario
I didn't put this name there. It was the library that did that.
de Cloudflare.
That's the username
Es para conectarnos al cliente de Ratchet para. Bueno,
and the Cloudflare
entonces, importante el export.
AP key.
¿Qué hacemos?
So it's important here.
Por supuesto, es enseñar el ejemplo.
I've given you the example. Of course, I've shown you the example.
¿Vale? Lo cargamos.
We load it,
Y ahora,
and you'll see
créame el dominio. No ha dicho
should
nada,
create a
no ha-
domain. It hasn't said anything, so it should have created the domain.
Era cuestión estadística, no tiene que salir bien, ¿sabes?
It was just a statistical matter. This had to go right. If you now look at the IPP,
Pepe. ¿De acuerdo? Igual que lo creamos, pues lo borramos. Que fijaos qué estupidez de script.
it's just a stupid little piece of
La idea es,
script.
si queremos scriptar todo esto, pues es bastante. ¿Vale?
But scripting all this is kind of useful.
Borra Pepe. Ya está, no tiene más, ¿vale? Hasta aquí, sencillito, para el tema de la gestión.
There you go. To manage your
Ahora, ¿qué queremos
domains.
hacer?
What do we want to do now? What we want
Desplegar pues un stack nuevo.
is to deploy a new
Más
stack,
rabia nos dé.
whichever one we fancy.
¿Cómo creamos un stack nuevo?
So how do we create a new stack?
Rancher.
Rancher,
Para descargarte el CLI, dice, ¿dónde me lo descargo? De tal.
to download,
Pero Rancher,
well, your Rancher,
bajáis abajo del todo y
you
aquí
go
abajo
down
tenéis
to the
el CLI.
bottom, and here you can see it says CNI on the right. Can you see that?
Podéis dejar Rancher Compose, poner lo que queréis.
Where you can leave
CLI.
Rancher Compose, but you don't want Rancher Compose, you want Rancher CLI.
Es un binario,
They're binary.
está chungola, todo va todo
It's in column, so it should all go okay. All right, that's it.
Entonces, ¿qué voy a hacer ahora?
Now, what am I going to do?
Me voy donde tengo el binario,
I'm going to go and see where I've got my binary.
a las opciones que tenéis.
There it is.
¿Qué cosas podemos hacer aquí?
What can we
Comando,
do here?
Prácticamente todo.
Command line, virtually anything, really.
Stacks.
We can install stacks.
¿Vale?
Okay.
Nos lista los stacks que ya hemos visto, pero listados en
Got all the stacks there. You got them?
Podemos mostrar los
And we
servicios
can
que solo
show
tenemos stack.
the services which isn't the same as the stacks. Remember, a stack can have many services.
Utiliza el stack APPCNF, incluso el estado donde está healthy.
You can see the state, it's healthy, what image.
¿Qué es esto que después lo subiré? ¿Vale?
What's this?
Está pensado
This is
para,
thought out.
es decir, en los balanceadores que estén desplegados.
Because any balances that you've got deployed, if you want to
Quiere desplegar
deploy
con,
an image
una Kali con SSH.
with a Macaulay with SSH, but the SSH can't be balanced.
Puede balancearse por dominio.
It can't be balanced by domain, you can't do it with PEP.com.
Entonces, obviamente, en la máquina
So obviously the machine where we want to put it needs to have a port.
lo voy a pegar para
I'm going to stick it so that you can see it. I just want you to have a look at it. Here what we did was find in the machine, it's a balancer, a free port. And once we've got a free port, then what do we do? In our catalog, as we see in the open bus, we just put a question is. The question was, tell me the port. You remember? So we said, okay, this is going to be the port. But everything has to be automated. So how do we deploy something from the catalog? If you just write catalog, it'll show you everything that you've got in the catalog. All the things that you've got in the catalog. So let's go back and deploy the open bus again. For our catalog.
Del community. Vale, solo muestra del community. Ay, Dios mío. Fijaos qué guay, que yo te todas mis demos con WordPress, ¿eh? Todas. Entonces, aún así voy a lanzarlo para aquí. Sí. Porque si os acordáis de cuando intentamos lanzar WordPress...
I don't know if you remember. That's why there's all sorts of words, or questions that we asked before launching. And in the case of what we did with the open pass, you remember the port that we asked for? I don't know what's happened to WordPress.
Dice que no encuentra ahora ni la plantilla. Y esto sí que estaba probadísimo antes de la charla. Bueno, community, WordPress. Ah, vale, ¿sabéis lo que nos está diciendo? Que ya tenemos un sitio, creo, que nos está diciendo esto, ya llega al punto que... Lo que nos debería es preguntar las variables. ¿Vale? Ahora, que no sé si lo veis aquí, que pregunta public port, que son las variables que tenía. Public port...
You can see public port, user, but if we're scripting, it's senseless that it asks us anything. So for that reason, they've got an option here that says go back directly to response. With the option of -A, and you give them a response. What sort of format do the text files have? Variable name equals value. It's very simple. So you've got to have all the ones that it asks for, otherwise it'll stop.
Voy a corregir esto, que me ha quedado antes fallo. A ver. Y ya con esto.
And with this, I think we've nearly finished this workshop.
¿Vale?
Okay?
Y ya está. Entonces, en teoría,
In theory,
nos dirá, bueno, ya estoy desplegando, ya no tengo
you can say, okay, I'm deploying, I have no more questions. It hasn't asked any question, it's deployed. Now I have no time. I wanted to mix the fact that this is a domain, and automatically I install and I launch a template with the parameters I choose. And with a click, I create the whole environment, and with another click, I can delete it. What else? I'm really sorry for this disturbance. Thank you very much.